Barnett, and I am one of the co-sponsors of this event. I am the founder and CEO of Grooop, and Grooop is a safety platform designed to make safety more fun and intuitive, non-invasive, and inclusive. So we work with universities, corporate HRs, and field workers, and also just friends and family to make sure that safety is a part of everyday life. We're so excited to be hosting this. We really wanted to be able to host something that we thought is really prevalent right now, but also something that is not touched on all the time, which is mental health in the workplace and being able to apply it. And so we're so excited about this. My co-sponsor, Nikki, who is with Define the Line, can tell you a little bit about herself and what Define the Line is.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. It is so great to have you here today. Nina and I were really excited about this because mental health in the workplace specifically really speaks to our heart. Define the Line is a company that is helping employees understand what it means to go from bystander to ally when it comes to harassment prevention. And so oftentimes when we're talking about harassment, mental health issues come up, because those are hard situations that we have to navigate in the workplace. And so when Nina came up with this idea, I was like, yes, we have to talk about mental health. And we really wanted to focus on individuals in the workplace. So how do we as professionals take care of ourselves so that we can take care of our team and our organization? So excited for the panel today. And I'll let Nina take it from here and introduce who we have hosting today.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, as Nikki said, I mean, especially with our company, we really focus on safety does also include mental health, and it is a big part of feeling safe. And that is something that we're really focused on in 2021. So we're so excited to have Larry, Rachel, and Siobhan here. I will give you a quick introduction, which does not do any of them justice because they're all incredible. And then we will just jump into some questions that you submitted, and then we'll have a little bit of time for Q&A at the end. But I also want to remind people before we start that this is a 3-part series. And so this webinar is really focused on helping yourself and your individual and just making sure that you have your mental health straight before you're going on trying to help your whole team or anything like that. But we will be on the 26th doing our second webinar, which we're really excited about, which is all about helping your team and identifying and helping those struggling on your team. So we really hope you join us for that. That is also a free event, so we'll give you more information on that later. But I just wanted to introduce. So today we have Rachel Wakeford, who is an ASW therapist who enjoys utilizing psychodynamic theory, which allows for the client to gain a deeper sense of understanding of what is happening in their unconscious. This approach is helpful to clients because it allows them to dig deeper into their past to gain awareness of where they are in the present. Having received her Master of Social Work degree from East Carolina University, Rachel has utilized her education and experience in an array of populations, such as grief and end of life, various mental health diagnoses, and trauma. Additionally, Rachel has experience with mindfulness and relaxation techniques. She is passionate about working with children, adolescents, and young adults. These populations are often undergoing transitional periods and abrupt stages of change that can cause anxiety, extreme stress, and other mental aspects of their health. So welcome, Rachel. We are also joined by Dr. Larry Sandberg, who is a psychiatry specialist out of New York, and he has over 38 years of experience in the medical field. He graduated from New York State University College of Medicine and Upstate Medical School in 1983. Dr. Sandberg is a psychiatrist and psychoanalyst interested in the clinical challenges of combining psychotherapy and psychoanalysis with appropriate pharmacotherapy. He also has a research interest in the psychodynamic treatment of panic disorder. So welcome, Dr. Sandberg. We're so excited to have you. And then last but not least, we have Shavonne Hodges, who is a New York-based fitness entrepreneur and community organizer with a passion for social impact in fitness. In 2016, she launched GrillzandGranola, a fitness company that curates and creates fitness experiences for women of color, starting with their signature TrapAerobics class. Since launching, her company has captured the attention of companies like Google, Facebook, Tumblr, and garnering various features by publications like Forbes, ClassPass, Yahoo, Lifestyle, and so many more. In 2017, she created, and sold diverse stock images, which eventually landed her first modeling job for Target's C9 Champion, a new kind of strong campaign. Then in 2018, she launched Zen Day, the first and only half-day wellness conference for 150 New York City-based women of color to learn how to collectively be well. Siobhan, named by Drum as 50 under 30 creative leaders of tomorrow, now works as a full-time wellness entrepreneur. So we are so excited to have Siobhan. So kind of without further ado, I would love to just jump into some of the questions that I know some of the attendees have. So this question I think applies to all of you, but what can you do to prevent from burnout and, you know, fatigue and handling anxiety, just when it comes to, I think, especially now, but also just working from home and dealing with that?
I'll start. I'll just say, I think kind of establishing a healthy routine, like, you know, whether that's getting up, going on a run, or even I tell some of my clients, I'm like, even if you have to break up your day by going to get a coffee from the drive-through, maybe just establishing somewhat of a healthy routine, I think can really help, especially like you said, you know, like working from home can be very stressful for people. And then again, you know, like good sleeping, just your typical self-care, what you find helpful.
Yeah, I would add that keeping in mind that self-care isn't selfish, and that really being able to prioritize self-care as part of one's lifestyle is critically important. And I think that particularly during the pandemic, when routines have been so disrupted, the idea of planning things like what Rachel was just saying, not only to have the activity itself, but to have it to look forward to,
Mm-hmm.
you know, outside of the scope of work, whether it's getting together with a friend safely or having a phone call or a Zoom call. But it's important to have these respites that we create outside of the typical day in, day out stress of our usual workload.
Yeah, I'm just going to piggyback off of what Dr. Sandberg said, but as someone who has experienced burnout, because I did work full time and ran a company for like a good 4.5 years. Yeah, for me, it's been about routines and then establishing really strong boundaries so that you actually create space in your life to take care of yourself.
Absolutely. I agree with all those. And I think, you know, that's something that so many of us clung to, I think, right at the beginning of COVID, was just finding some type of routine, something that seemed normal. And so I think that that's definitely something that has helped all of us and helped us all feel a little more sane. And so Siobhan, kind of what you were just saying, how did you handle working full time with a mental health disorder versus how did you handle it, you know, with an entrepreneur? How really did you handle, you know, severe anxiety and, you know, things that came along with that?
Yeah, I would say just speaking from the full-time employee perspective, I think the wonderful thing about having a full-time job is that you kind of already have a routine for yourself. You wake up at a certain time, you have time for your commute, you get in the office, you do the same things every day. But the challenge is that other people's work styles and their communication styles, they would trigger me. So for me as a full-time employee, that's where I really had to learn how to, you know, set up boundaries, but also set up, if in a lot of ways, the rules of engagement for working with me. And so like, it really just came down to having candid conversations. Like, I'm someone who likes to do a weekly status meeting rather than, you know, being interrupted throughout the day, because that actually triggers my anxiety when I have to flip my attention switch too often. And then as a full-time entrepreneur, I would say the big challenge for me has been just really sticking to a routine. The boundaries are there, but the routine, not so much, because it's a different day, different challenge, different task. And so what I've done is just make time, whether it's an hour and it could be at 7 p.m., it could be at 7 in the morning, but just making an hour to do absolutely nothing. Yeah.
I love that. I think we all need some time, definitely, to just take time to do nothing. And I think, you know, something that Dr. Sandberg was saying too, along the lines of self-care is not selfish. It's, you know, not bad to do nothing for an hour. And I think that that is something that's hard for a lot of people to grapple with. And so I think if we all can accept that, I think that would be so valuable. But, you know, kind of for all three of you, just going off of that, if people do have fear or anxiety, and even if they have a routine in place, what are some ways of coping with that fear and anxiety?
I think, well, I'll just start with this. I think really kind of checking in with yourself and finding really what works for you, because I think it's really easy to compare yourself to others, especially in a time like this, to think like, oh, that's working for them, so I'm going to try it. So I think, you know, kind of being more gentle with yourself and, you know, practicing some self-awareness and just figuring out like really what will help me feel better, rather than, you know, exhausting yourself trying, you know, if someone doesn't like running isn't going to help. So I think that's really where it's important to start, is just like acknowledging what you like to do as far, you know, with the self-care, kind of what Dr. Sandberg was saying, starting out with that.
So what I would add to what Rachel was just saying, it can be really helpful to make a distinction between fear and anxiety, because they're different. Fear is in response to an external threat, COVID, Trump, racism. So when in a state of fear, you want to do what you have to stay safe. And that may mean isolating socially. It may mean a form of activism to affect change. But with fear, there's an external threat. Anxiety, and I'm sure Siobhan can relate to this, anxiety is very physical. Anxiety is an uncomfortable state that's very difficult to be free from. And there are a number of ways to deal with that through self-care, physical activity, aerobic activity, weightlifting, yoga, meditation. I practice Tai Chi, can be very helpful. But it's also important to have in mind, when do I need to ask for help? And to keep in mind that if you're suffering with an anxiety disorder, that it's something that can be treated, whether again, it's through some physical activity, mindfulness, psychotherapy, sometimes medication. But distinguishing anxiety from fear is helpful, and recognizing, do I need to turn to someone for help? Can I do this by myself? Can be really kind of an important determination.
Yeah, fear, I mean, anxiety really is in some ways a state of just being at times. And I like to think of it as like, I mean, energy, it can't be created, it can't be destroyed, but it can be transformed. And when I'm anxious, all of my energy is stored in my mind. So I have to run around and just shake things up a little bit, just redistribute it. That's what it feels like for me. But when it comes down to fears are things that I ruminate over. And so a technique that I do is, it actually turns into a little bit of an obsession, and I'll keep thinking about it. So for example, when COVID hit and I'm a full-time entrepreneur and everyone says all the gyms are closed, my fear is, oh my gosh, I can't take care of myself, right? And now I'm not living in this state of abundance, I'm scarce. And now the fear turns into anxiety. Now my stomach is hurting and my chest is beating and I'm not sleeping, right? So it's like, okay, what can I do to prevent all of that energy from being stored in my mind? So it's something I do for myself, and I do this on the regular. One, in the morning, I have like affirmations that I want to accomplish, things I want to accomplish, who I want to become this year. So every morning I just say them out loud, because I feel like I need to parent myself sometimes. And I need to like get a little motivational speech. And if I can't do it myself, I listen to a TED Talk. And that kind of shifts my energy a little bit. And then the other thing I do is like, I just write down all of my fears, right? Because I need to get them out of my brain. I need to separate myself from them and see if they're actually valid. And oftentimes they're not.
Absolutely. I definitely relate to that. And I think that is such an important distinction between fear and anxiety, because I've never even thought of it that way. And I'm someone that I've been in therapy for years, and I'm such an advocate of that. And I think also, you know, fitness has always been a big passion of mine, but I think just like all of y'all are saying, you know, the difference between fear and anxiety is so important, and being able to identify that. And I think this sort of goes into the next question of ways of dealing with it. If your office, you know, whether you're remote or you're actually in the office, you know, how do you cope with these stressors, you know, with your coworkers? How do you kind of, without offending people, that kind of thing? Because I know that that can be sort of something that people are worried about. What do you think is the best way to approach that?
I guess I can speak from my employee perspective, my employee hat. Something that I did when I had to even just tell my manager that I had an anxiety disorder, the first thing I did was I waited and I just did my job, because I first wanted to prove to her, you know, that I'm competent and capable of doing my job. My mental health issues are never a crutch for me. If anything, I treat them like they are just people in my lives, and sometimes they show up uninvited and I gotta kick them out. So that's the first thing I did. I waited about maybe 6 weeks into this job to like just get acclimated and just do my job. And then I started, as I'm going through this 6-week process, I started to make notes of the things that my manager did that would trigger me or disrupt my flow. Like one of those things is that I believe my anxiety is a superpower, because I think about everything. Like I think 10 steps ahead, just because, you know, again, fear, I'm scared that things are going to go wrong. And so I started writing down the triggers. And then I decided to have a private meeting with my manager, and I try to come with solutions. So I don't use it as a crutch. I just say, hey, I wanted to share this with you, you know, in confidence. Thank you. I think I've been doing a great job. Here are all the things I accomplished. Cool. Now here are the things, and I know that I can do more. And here's how you can help me. So it literally is just like, here's what I need from you to meet me where I need to be so that I can perform optimally. Unfortunately, my manager wasn't that receptive, so I had to talk to HR to get some help. But, you know, I did what I could in my power. I tried to reinforce some of these things that I needed, and it just didn't work out. But, you know, I tried, and that's what I did for myself.
I'll just, sorry, go ahead, Dr. Sandberg.
I was just going to say, the kinds of things that you're describing are very much the kinds of things that a therapist would help a patient to come to. so you kind of right, so that there's a problem solving, assertive, engaging kind of way to manage the anxiety. I would just add as a point of information, because I have a lot of patients working fearful of discussing their mental health issues, being stigmatized, etc., that listeners should know that there's the Americans with Disabilities Act makes it illegal to discriminate against individuals by virtue of having mental health issues. What that means is that if an individual needs to see the psychiatrist during work hours, that the employer, if the employer is 25 or more individuals, has to offer an accommodation without prejudice. And so often individuals are afraid, because again of the stigma, negative feedback, to ask for that. But it's important to know that that's a right. It's a legal right.
I'll just add a quick thing to that. They covered that beautifully. It's just, you know, that you're just your best advocate. Your advocate, like you know, to be able to advocate for yourself is just really important. And again, to not feel stigmatized by that, because again, yeah, mental health is health. So yeah, but just, you know, feeling that empowerment by being able to discuss those hard things, even though, you know, not minimizing that they are obviously difficult to bring up. But you know, I've had some clients that say that there's been some like mental health action plans that their HR have implemented, as far as like, do I take a day off every other week? Like what do these mental health days really look like and entail? So that's always nice to hear from people. So
Absolutely. And I think, you know, kind of coming at it from the other angle as well, and this is something we'll cover in other webinars as well, but I would love to hear, just because all of you are such mental health professionals and advocates, what do you do if you're kind of on the other side of it? Maybe, I know we have some people that are on HR teams that are listening, and what if you are the person kind of on the receiving end? How do you support your team members if they aren't, you know, coming exactly with those words, but maybe you're recognizing what are some ways that you can support them if you're either noticing something or you just want to make sure that they're aware that you support their mental health journey and that you want them to be strong in their mental health.
I can respond briefly, but I'm not sure how helpful it would be. Empathy is a wonderful capacity to have. And if you're working in HR, you presumably care about people, presumably, not just productivity. And so if you see that there are people who are suffering, there being a receptivity to really caring about them and feeling, and that being authentic can go a long way to people feeling safe and trusting and being able to depend on HR as a resource.
Okay, I'm coming off of mute because my HR heart just needs to jump in on this. Larry, I could not agree more with the empathy spot for HRs. And then to get into the more technical piece of it, we talk about the interactive process when it comes to ADA. And so having conversations and documenting, what does this person need to have? And that interactive process is collectively coming together to say, what do you as the employee need? And what can we as an organization offer to you? And how can we come up with something that will support both sides? So also from a personal or professional standpoint, knowing that there has to be that candid conversation where you can come to a resolution of, okay, this is what we can offer, but this is also our expectations from the organization, so we can support you and you support us in it as well.
Yep, absolutely. I think, that touches, and I'm sure everyone listening that's in HR agrees completely with empathy, and that's probably a big reason why you got into that. So I think agreeing and just, seeing people and knowing that not everyone is going to come and say, this is what's happening, but just being able to hold the space where they feel like they can, I think is so important. And kind of going along with this, Siobhan, you touched on this a little bit, but how do you set those boundaries? I mean, especially when you do feel like you're either working all the time with these people and they are your friends, or, your boss or your coworkers. How do you set those boundaries? And anyone can answer this, and just make sure that you kind of have that work-life balance. I know, especially right now, where it feels like work is also in my bedroom and I also live here and I sleep here, and this is also my safe space. So how do you, set those boundaries with your coworkers and also just, emphasize that there is a balance between work and life? Kind of two questions, but.
I guess would you like me to speak from employee hat, or would you like me to speak from I'm the boss?
Either one.
Okay, so when I was an employee, I would do things like block off the first half of my day on my calendar, and that's like me time. That is deep focus time. And then the later half of my day is like, okay, I have space for meetings and stuff like that. Obviously, you have to be a little bit flexible, but I think that even just like someone looking at my calendar and seeing I don't have time for them, it sends a message. Also, another thing that I would do is, at least at my old company, when I am in full focus mode, I cannot be at my desk, at my little table with all of my other coworkers. So I always would get up and go to a private room just because I know what I need to focus. So those are like little things, or just saying, hey, I would love to help you with this project, but unfortunately, I have a lot on my plate, or, I'm always setting the tone for how someone should talk to me and when and where they should meet with me. I'm always just like, okay, well, I'm available at these times. No, you meet me there, kind of like that. And then as the founder of an organization, and I have like a team of 4 people and interns and consultants and all that stuff, I set boundaries by just saying, hey, these are my hours of operation. Do not email me before 11 a.m. You will not get a response, because 9 to 11, I literally am just doing what I can for myself and mentally getting myself like in the day. And then within my team internally, we have a weekly status meeting where I give my employees space to tell me how they feel, to tell me how, if anything in their workload is affecting their mental health, because we're a fitness company, but we also do a lot of socially impactful work in the mental health space. We work with therapists all the time. And so those values have to seep into our, our corporate culture. So there's always space to talk about things. How can I problem solve? How can I help you? And then the other boundary is that we do not work or communicate with each other on Sundays. Sundays is your rest day, live your life. Yeah.
Larry and Rachel, I don't know if y'all have anything to add to that.
Well, what Siobhan was saying makes a lot of sense to me, and I try. I mean, I'm self-employed, and my work is mostly clinical, but what I do, I carve out time also where I do not. I have the power to do it, to not see patients, and I will get on my bike and go into the park, and I exercise for an hour. Or at the front end of the day, as I mentioned before, I do Tai Chi, and that time is blocked out. So similarly, it's not time, barring an emergency where I'm going to see patients or I'm going to engage in busy calls. No, it's self-care time and it's protected time. And I think that if you make a deliberate effort to do that, to create that space, then it's something that can become routinized, or it can become part of the rhythm and integrated into a healthy lifestyle.
And I'll just add a little bit to that. When I was first starting out, I was very much like, oh, give me all of the clients, like I want to talk to anyone and everyone, and having a hard time kind of making that, putting that boundary in place. But I, have found that it is so important to take that time to go work out, or just read a a leisure book, not even like an educational book, just to, because again, how can I help others if I'm not taking that time for myself as well? So yeah, it's just, again, just piggybacking off of that, just taking that time for that self-care. So
Absolutely. And I think, that's something that my favorite thing about this first webinar is the fact that, we're really emphasizing, even if you are someone that is taking care of a whole team or taking care of a whole company or whatever it might be, just really making sure that you are also taking time for yourself, because that is the way you're going to be the most beneficial to others. So I'm really glad that, we have this. And this question came from an attendee that I really related to. And I also know I have so many friends, families, and, colleagues that have asked this question, but what do we do and how do we improve mental health in the workplace when our culture celebrates unhealthy long hours and constant grind, which I know is such the case in so many different cities? But what do you think, how do people cope with that when it is just such a celebrated culture at their company or just even their city? I know that's a very big thing in New York, but what would you say?
Coming from the ad industry, I can definitely say that I have had days where I would work from like 9 a.m. to 1 o'clock in the morning, and then have to be at the office or the venue, the following day by like 6 a.m. and I've slept for 3 hours. I think something that I don't know, I feel like this is like, it took time, it took experience, and it also took me like seeing a therapist, but like, I realized that when you get in tune with yourself and you know exactly, what you need, and you kind of, in a lot of ways, have been empowered to master your own energy, you honestly stop caring about what everyone else is doing. So for me, they love alcohol in the ad industry. I mean, we literally had a bar in the office, and I'm sure that no one has ever seen me at happy hour because I don't like to drink alcohol. It makes my anxiety worse. But again, it comes down to setting those boundaries. Like, I'm a person, I know what I'm about, and I know how I want to show up in the world. And I feel that if it's a problem for you, and to me, if any of my personal characteristics are problematic to you, and I don't like to work long hours, but I still get my job done, then that's something that I have to talk to HR about, because for me, I always say you can't dispute data. So I always have like a paper trail of all of the things I've accomplished, whether it's improving a process, whatever, and just you know, meeting my deadlines, all those things. And I just don't feel like there's always a need to work late and burn yourself out. You know, you make the best decisions when you feel like the best version of yourself.
Yeah. And I'll just add a little bit to that. I've had a few clients now that we've just worked on reframing their perspective of the work culture. It's, you know, I know a lot of you guys are probably familiar with like the whole small T trauma and big T trauma. And there's been a lot of that with, you know, people's past in their workplace. And so again, you know, there's obviously concrete options of like, well, you know, you can take this to HR, and then hopefully, you know, we're going in the direction of that. They'll be very receptive to that. But also acknowledging, you know, again, that empowerment aspect of the individual, and acknowledging their self-determination to, you know, I know there's like financial obligations, obviously, but really if it's that taxing on the mental health part of it as well, like really what's going to be, you know, harder in the end, dealing with this traumatic experience of working these long hours and the verbal abuse and the, you know, belittling and whatnot. So yeah, it's a tough game for sure. I think it's definitely coming up in, like you were saying, Nina, in the culture now with New York, and then out here in LA, it's very go as well. Especially, you know, even still in COVID, the hours, like you said, you almost are working more now being in your house. So yeah, it's a tough one.
I really like that question because I felt very sympathetic to it. And I know that for myself and also my work with patients, I try to encourage people to recognize that if their self-worth and self-esteem is going to be strongly linked to gratifying an oppressive boss, they're in for trouble. And that the more self-directed, the stronger one's own core, the more readily one can set limits and feel good about what he or she is doing. But we live in a society that is capitalistic and is not particularly invested in the emotional well-being of the employees. So I think having a healthy skepticism about what one is buying into and not losing oneself in the process is really important.
Yep, absolutely.
The way this comes up often clinically is that people come to see me and they have relationship problems, or the marriage is breaking up, or the kids are acting out because there's not the family life, the personal life has eroded under the pressure of work.
Yeah, and I think it's so important to try and, you know, identify that before, you know, something like those things come up. And so I hope that, you know, this can be something that, you know, taken back to friends, family, all that. Also, whoever has a cat, I'm just going to acknowledge that there's a cat meowing because I
I'm
love
gonna
it.
open the door, excuse
No,
me.
it's okay. I have a cat too, and my cat does the same thing. So I just wanted to acknowledge it so no one thought they were crazy.
I love it.
Our cat does.
I was deciding, is it really that disruptive or not? Or is getting up going to disrupt?
Because I'm the person that would think that I was hearing it only on my end. So I just wanted to acknowledge.
I didn't even notice it. Like,
and I'll tell you, pets are a great aspect of self-care.
there you go.
There you go. Exactly. So kind of, you know, just rounding out a couple of these last questions, and then we'll open for a couple questions in the chat. One of the things that I would love to ask is, you know, with so much just trauma in the past 12 months with loss and grief, and just now entering into winter and continued quarantine and all these things that seem to be going on, it's almost overwhelming. And how do we go about not worrying about that? I mean, how do we go about, I mean, I think, you know, as Siobhan said, obviously having like a self-awareness, but, you know, just how do we, is it, you know, acknowledging that there is grief happening in the world? You know, what is the best way to just sort of acknowledge all these things that are happening that is making the world chaotic, and also just being able to go about a quote unquote normal day?
Well, I would say that if the goal is to not worry, you're going to need to be unconscious or comatose, right? So that I do think that for most of us, this is a very worrying time. for so many reasons. But if the worrying can be circumscribed, worry time or writing things down, if it can be circumscribed, then it can be kind of put in a compartment. The other thing I would say is that when we're worried, a lot of people will all of a sudden become vigilant, and they can't get off of the screen following the news, for example. It's not good. There's a hypervigilance in order to try to feel more in control, but it actually escalates one's sense of worry. So the other recommendation I have, don't stick your head in the sand, but get doses of the news from reasonable news outlets in the morning, maybe in the evening, but do not overwhelm yourself with taking information in, and don't do it as bedtime reading. It does not work before bedtime.
Absolutely.
And I just add a little bit of, this is kind of going off of what Dr. Sandberg was saying earlier, but something that I think is extremely helpful is to just, again, have something to look forward to, whatever, to whatever degree that is. I just think that is, just so important for people's hope, to have something to look forward to, and knowing that, although this is a traumatic experience and there's a lot of grief going on, but, kind of sitting with it and realizing this is all something we are alone together kind of thing, and yeah, so that's what I would add.
I can honestly say that when the pandemic first started, the big lesson I had to learn is to stop attaching my sense of self-worth to the work that I do and to the role and the title that I have, because when it first started and then all the gyms are closed and I'm like, oh, how am I going to make money? I started doing exactly what Dr. Sandberg said. I put my head down and I was like, oh, stressed. I got to get control of this. I got to get a job, even though I don't want a job, but I need to do it for my safety. And that's I recognize it was coming from a place of fear. And to kind of just like shift the energy, I had to let go of this idea that I wasn't going to be okay, because I had to like write down all of the wins and all of the hard things I've had to overcome in the past. So I'm like, I'll be okay. I have a roof over my head. I'll be fine. I won't have all the money that I might want, but I'll be okay. And then I just started taking a daily walk, and like for an hour, it doesn't matter how long or, how far I walked, but I would just walk, play some music, play a meditation, whatever. And it kind of just slowly got me out of this whole idea that I must be in control all the time. And in one of the meditations, the trigger moment was that in this meditation I was listening to, they said that, a flower is going to grow during times of war, during times of peace. Flowers will always grow. And I don't know why I just kept telling myself, I'm a flower, I'm going to be okay. I'm a flower, I'm going to be okay. Again, parenting myself through it. You just got to parent yourself through it.
Yeah, I did the walk as well. The hourly walk. Obviously, it's gotten a little colder in New York, so that has turned into hourly stretching or something inside. But I think that those are all great. And also, if someone either wants to figure out maybe they have a mental health disorder, or they just want to improve overall mental health, do any of y'all have any resources or recommendations? Obviously there's a handout that I know that a lot of you contributed to that we will be sending out to the attendees, but are there any resources that you can just think of?
Well, something that was powerful for me when I got diagnosed with an generalized anxiety disorder. I'll just say it because it's really not a thing for me anymore, as in like I'm not attached to it. But I got diagnosed and I couldn't afford to go to a therapist because I was a broke New Yorker in her 20s, just trying to get my life in order. And I would go to NAMI, and NAMI was really helpful, National Alliance for mental illness. But I would go to these free group therapy sessions every single week after work. And it was a really good way for me to just put my life in perspective and to get some coaching and some help. So I highly recommend NAMI. It's one of my favorite organizations.
I'll kind of piggyback off that. I know there's a lot of different platforms, for therapists or counselors or psychiatrists. that offer reduced fee counseling, and I'm actually on one that's called Open Path Collective. And there's many out there like that. It's like somewhat of a matching service, but more just like, you know, a browsing website for people to go check out different therapists. And I know, especially with how COVID has financially impacted individuals, a lot of therapists are, you know, for the most part, very open to working with reduced fee clients. I know I am, because I obviously value people's mental health. So I would check out some like reduced fee platforms online as well.
Yeah, and I do think that accessibility to mental health treatment is a whole other big issue. But I'd mention not only what's already been said, but if you live in an urban setting, then certainly a city like New York, Chicago, Boston, Washington, there are therapy institutes that often work on a sliding scale. I've sent in some of the resources in New York City. There are medical centers where there are therapists in training who will work with patients essentially on a sliding scale. And so it's difficult, but if you persevere, there are resources in urban settings where it's possible to connect with good treatment.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And as I was just saying, there is a handout available. I will put the contact and all their information up right now. So if you would like to have the handout, it's free, obviously. And if you just go to this link, which we will also send out via the email, whether, you know, obviously all the attendees are hearing this right now, but also for the people that weren't able to attend, we'll get that link as well that will have some of the resources that they sent in, along with a class pack special to Grills and Granola with Siobhan. So be sure to just fill out that quick form, it's just your name, all that kind of stuff, just so we can send out the download to you. And of course, please register for the next webinar. We are really, really excited. We'll be working with Melissa Barker and her team from the Phoenix Project, and they will be talking about identifying and helping those struggling on your team, as well as working with technology and making sure that your team has access to resources and what you can do, especially during COVID. But I think, let me see if there's anything in the chat. I don't think so. Okay, let's see. We'll ask this one last question before we end, but how can we, Fiona asked, how can we set a routine but actually stick to it?
Well, in my calendar, the things I do for self-care are colored in yellow. There's work stuff that's red and blue, but my self-care is yellow. And there's a wettedness to the rhythm and routine, and frankly, the color. It helps, but also if you're starting something, give yourself some time. Give yourself some time to get into it and to see what you can get back from it, because it can become positively reinforcing when you experience the benefits of the routine that you're implementing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll even add to that. I mean, for me, I am a big written planner person. I'm also very type A, so that's not appealing to everyone. But I think that just being able to just write down some type of routine and kind of have it, I feel like that has always helped me. Again, kind of depends on your personality type with that one, but I think that that's something that helps me. And the daily walk, I mean, that's something that now people that I work with know that I go and have this walk every day, and I have to do it when it's still light outside. So that has made it a little earlier in the day. So even though it's changed timing slightly because of daylight savings and all of that, it still is always that part of my day. And if I have to work after, fine, but I always do that. And and it really I just kind of dropped everything that I was doing one day and started doing that. And so, it wasn't like I started immediately and every single day I was, nailing it. But I think that, trying things out, like they were saying earlier, is so helpful, and just figuring out exactly what works for you. And that might take a second, which is okay. But yeah.
And I just add in there too, like if you're a very, social person and you would like some of this self-care to include, a good friend, having that little piece of accountability can, if that works for you, then that certainly can be helpful.
Yeah, I guess just to add on to that, as someone who has a fitness company, one of the ways that we help the women that we serve establish routines is that, we start with these little short 21-day challenges. It's like if you can do this for 21 days and you'll get the accountability, you have a whole community of people having the same experience as you. It's really hard, but we're all holding each other accountable. Again, like Dr. Sandberg said, after a while, it starts to feel really good. And then it's like, ooh, I need that. I must have it. And then it's like your relationship with it has shifted and you're like, oh, okay, yep, I'm going to keep this. It's like drinking water, tastes like nothing, but you need it.
Exactly. Well, thank you again so much to our panelists, and thank you for everyone for attending. And please be sure to reach out if you have any questions. We'll get all of the contact information if you get the download. You can take a screenshot of the screen that's up right now if you want it, but we hope to see you at the next one, which will be so exciting. And we are so excited that you were able to attend today. And again, thank you to our panelists. This has been so informative for me as well. So this has been great.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.